Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. Thank you for joining us from whatever altitude you are. We are at 5,280 feet, mile high territory, where you will be in September. We will see you in September. All the smart people will be there in September. RiseUpToMileHigh.com. And we look forward to see you at Mile High 11. And today I'm super thrilled to have as a guest a good friend, Dr. Katie Ray, who hails out of Chicago, which isn't quite 5,280 feet, but it's a great place. and we won't hold it against Chicago. And we're going to talk to her about her experience in chiropractic. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Katie Ray.
Thank you so much, Danny. Such an honor to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you here. So Dr. Katie Ray is the owner of New Day Chiropractic in Chicago. She's been practicing for 10 years. We've known each other since she was in school. She practices network spinal and also helps chiropractors, mentoring them as well as in their email campaigns. She's a phenomenal chiropractor and also a very wise business person. So I'm really glad to have everybody, all of our listeners to learn from her and get to know her better. Also, if you're watching this on whatever channel you're watching it or you are listening, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss any Mile High tech. Now, Katie, let's help people get to know you first. How did you find your way into chiropractic?
Yeah, pretty serendipitously, I'm sure, like most of us. I actually started out getting some chiropractic care when I was in my early 20s. And I guess it's increasingly common these days, but even then, as a teenager and a young adult, just having a lot of stress and a lot of aches and pains and people just feeling like they didn't know what was wrong with me, was getting massages all the time. Finally, at some point, a massage therapist recommended chiropractic. I probably received chiropractic for a year or a year and a half. It was fine. Nothing about it ever would have inspired me to become a chiropractor, though. Like, it was very small picture. It was very how I felt that day, how am I this felt, how am I that felt. I would pretty much just go back to feeling as bad as I felt before, like a day after I got adjusted. So somebody mentioned network to me, and they just described it really vaguely. They said, there's this weird kind of chiropractic where somebody like touches you basically lightly and then it helps you. Well, I was just not at all interested in that. I was like, well, that sounds like a waste of money. So I had no plans to look into this at all. But as circumstances would have it, a few weeks later, I had just moved from where I was from in Wisconsin to Chicago for a grad program that I was starting. And my pain levels were just like through the roof. I didn't know what to do. I had no money. I felt like I was completely out of options. And I remembered what the guy said about the light touching chiropractic. I looked it up, went in for my first appointment. I don't really even remember that much about the appointment, honestly. But what I do remember is when I left this woman's office, I felt like I was floating. Like I tell my clients this jokingly. I'm like, I kind of felt like I was on drugs. Like I felt light. I felt kind of like happy, like it was like freaking me out. And if you ask me now, or if you had asked me then, like, did my pain go away? I'm not even sure. Like, maybe it kind of just like receded to the background. What I got from that experience was more of that big picture idea of chiropractic. Like, I had that as an experience. And so that's what kept me going back. And then that's what had me eventually become a chiropractor.
Get the big idea. So yeah, and at that point, not now, but at that point, what did the big picture look like to you? I mean, I know you're practicing now and philosophically might be different, but like what walking out of the first couple of visits there, what did that mean?
I felt like I felt like I had a deep knowing that I was getting better, like
Uh,
on a cellular level. Like
huh?
something felt fundamentally different about the way I was processing. which is not something I'd ever thought of. I didn't think about systems. I thought about parts. And so as soon as I was tuned into the fact that I had a system and that system could function badly or it could function well, that was my first kind of, I don't know, I guess you would call it kind of like a spiritual experience, because I actually felt like I was part of something bigger, and I hadn't felt that way before. I felt like I was just kind of falling apart.
Mhm.
And then from there to also be able to leave my appointments and just kind of feel more at ease in life. Like I felt happier. I felt like I could relate to people more easily.
Mhm.
And so that was part of the big picture for me as well.
Got it. Got it. So then off to Life University, is that where you went?
Yep,
Right.
ended up going to Life, and that was in what, like 2008, and then I graduated in 2012. But I was super focused because I had had this experience through network, so I knew that that's what I wanted to do,
Mhm.
and stayed pretty focused on that through my schooling.
Now, before we talk about starting a practice from scratch, and getting out and making it happen, which you've done so well, um, you and I had the opportunity to work together, collaborate, because you were in Dr. Matthew McCoy's class, who I'm a big fan of,
Yeah.
and put together a case study. Can you talk a little bit about that experience of putting together a case study, not just the information like that we worked on, because let's share what the results of the study were, but also what it was like to do a case study, because I'd love to see more people do case studies.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I think that in the research world, and those of us who've done research, there's a tendency sometimes to almost kind of like poo-poo case studies where it's like, oh, well, it's not like a larger research study, it's only a case study. But when we tell our clients and our patients, practice members, whatever you call yours, about a case study, they're
Mhm.
excited. Like they want to know about this like issue that somebody had, or how
Mhm.
they improved, and they're absolutely inspired by it. So they're so worth getting out there. It was relatively easy, if I remember correctly, to do the case study with you. I mean,
Mhm.
partly because, let's be fair, Dr. Danny, like you kept good files on your clients. So I had some material to work with. But the class was only a quarter, and I was able to write up the case study and ended up having it published pretty easily with you. And I still talk to my clients about it to this day. I still have people say, "But could this form of chiropractic help with scoliosis?" And I'm like, "Listen, because it was a man who, if I remember correctly, the man that was the subject of the research, he was like in his 70s
Yep.
possibly, and
Yep.
he had a scoliosis, and they actually showed the X-ray results over time, going up to 2 years of being in care. And within
Right.
a year, it was like from like 10 degrees down to almost nothing. And then 2 years, it was like actually nothing, basically. So, I always explain this to my clients where I'm like, this man was in his 70s. Like, he probably had this most of his life. Like, if this is possible for somebody to get this kind of transformation, at this late stage, it's definitely possible for anybody.
And I think it's really important to say that that was over 2 years. And as you know, and I know, sadly, there's a story in the chiropractic profession that 12 visits is maximum medical improvement or something like
Mm,
that.
awful.
And this was showing, I mean, the person was continuing to improve from a 12-month film to a 24-month film, which is remarkable, that there's improvement beyond maximal medical improvement, and that you can see that. We all know that as chiropractors, but it's good to see that in print.
Yeah, I especially think that that's such a great thing about that study, and just showing that, because what if he had only had like 12 visits? Could his scoliosis have improved? Maybe it would have improved somewhat. But like, think of all the results that this man was going to have in his body and in his life that he would have been cheated out of by not getting to get that care over time.
And the world needs to know that, and that's why I really want to encourage people to publish case studies. a lot of people, and myself, I'm not the only one. We have lots of data in our offices, X-ray data and instrumentation data that's sitting there, let alone people's stories, their symptomatic changes. And I think you were at network programs where Ralph Boone encouraged us. I don't remember the timing of all that. Used to encourage us and do programs on teaching us how to do a case study. So it's something that more chiropractors need to do, help the chiropractic profession as a whole, regardless of what approach, an upper cervical case study, a network case study, a Gonstead case study, all of it uplifts the whole profession. So to do that. So I'm glad that you did that.
Me too. Thank you.
So now starting a practice, you get out of school, you get the big picture, you want to change the world. What's it like starting a practice?
Oh my gosh. So my whole time that I was in school, and that's the question you get throughout your schooling. Everybody's like, so what are you going to do when you graduate? And you don't really know how to answer. The answer kind of changes as you go through school. And for me, I never thought starting my own practice was an option. I thought that was basically for rich people. I was like, well, how would I do that? I have no money. But then toward the end of my schooling, I ended up deciding that I wanted to go back to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
There was nobody here to associate with. Like, I didn't have any kind of like on-ramp, as is the case for many of us graduating. There aren't a lot of people out there looking for associates, especially depending on what form of chiropractic you practice, let alone in the city that you want to live in. So I really just had to find a way to do it myself. I mean, I just like everything I think was like really bootleg. Like I remember I basically just wanted to find an office where I didn't have to do a build out, where I could just practice without having to put any money into it. I had a very extreme recency bias, I would say, in terms of whatever advice someone had just given me really recently was like what I ended up following. Like, I remember somebody told me, like, whatever you do, make sure your office has a really big sign. So I found a place where there was like a big hanging sign already where I could just change out the sign faces and put my own in. I jumped through like a ridiculous amount of hoops to get this like very small, I think it was like $12,000 or $15,000 loan that basically just helped me live for like the first 3 months that I had the office. So I feel like if I could do it, anyone could do it. Looking back, I don't know. I mean, we might talk about this later. I recently finally read that book that everybody was all about like 5 or 6 years ago, Profit First. And it's very conservative financially. It's really telling you to only do what you can afford to do and not to rack up all this debt. I don't know how I would have been able to start the way that I started without kind of racking up some debt on the front end. But that was just kind of the price I was willing to pay to get out there and be serving people right away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and now you're fast forward to now, you're moving to a bigger, better location. Am I correct about that?
Well, it's definitely going to be better, better for me, and I think better for my clients too. Even though for some of them it is going to be driving a bit further, but I'm finally realizing my dream of having a completely harmonious work-life situation and be practicing in the same building where I live. So that is happening in July. This is why I'm sitting in this weird room with boxes in the background, in case you were wondering. Couldn't she find a better place to do this interview? No. But it's going to be really good when it happens.
Good. Well, very exciting. So now, a few years, 10 years into practice, more than a few, what are some important lessons, 10 years in, that you would say to the new doctor in their first year to focus on?
Oh, wow. I think that the first one that comes to mind is following up on every lead. A lot of times business people, chiropractors, we kind of talk ourselves out of, we're like, oh, so-and-so didn't call me back. Like they must not really be interested. It's just like, no, never assume that. Just keep on following up, because if you don't, you're not being honest.
Mhm.
being honest, is you are excited about what you're doing and you know that it changes people's lives. If you're not following up actively, there's an incongruence there. So I think that
Mm.
that is one of the most important things.
I'm glad you said that way, and that's important. The coherence of your purpose and your actions following through are vital. And then what about the experience of your office being its own bubble, its own community? Is that something that's important?
So important. I mean, you heard me talk earlier about my experience of chiropractic, like feeling like you're part of something bigger. Like that's a big part of my purpose. Like I want people to be able to feel that they're part of something bigger, physically and otherwise. And through chiropractic and through the experience of being a community member in my practice. So,
Mhm.
at my practice, people have formed all kinds of relationships that have been beneficial to everybody involved, and there's a great energy to it, and it's a great thing when you're the chiropractor, and that's what coming into like work is, to be around these energized people who are giving of themselves and not just, like most people, like a lot of people in life right now, kind of like sucking up energy. It's more people who
Right.
are like giving energy.
Well, and I think that's important for people to realize, because in my experience in practice, I've done it for a couple of years now. My experience is that creating a community in your office is one of the most important jobs. That you have to create the experience of something that people are connected to and they feel at home with, and they want to be there and like they're part of something. And make them feel that there's a movement that are part of, that this is somehow a movement in their community for health and well-being, or whatever verbiage is your vibe for how you are your office, that people long to be there and they feel like they're part of something, and just by being there that they're contributing that, and they're part of a family. And then they are going to, they'll be on your tables more often, versus that it's something that is just getting done to them once in a while and they're not part of.
Definitely. Yeah, the other kind of ways that I've really focused on growing that community, I did throughout, I'm gonna have to move it up here now, but throughout my whole time having the office, I hosted my own monthly networking event, like a business networking event at the office. And so some of the people would be clients from my office, but a lot of them wouldn't be, but they would still, somehow tune in to that energy of like, wow, what is this? Like, this is really cool. Like, there's a really great vibe here. Like,
Mhm.
getting to feel like you just said about feeling like they're part of something exciting and energizing that's growing.
Right.
Um, so having that event, having events is something else that I would definitely recommend to somebody new in practice, and then grow your email list also.
Tell me why your email list is important.
My email list is important in terms of continually growing and regrowing, um, deepening the culture of the practice, and the people in it, and really like moving my relationship with my clients forward on a week to week basis. So
Mhm.
I'm not like personal, like telling all kinds of like personal stories, but it's like from me when I like send my practice community a blog or an email. And it's meant to help them in their care. It's meant to help them feel more connected to me and the other clients in the practice. And I think that I just kind of took for granted my email list building and my email marketing until COVID.
Mm.
Um, like it was kind of just something that I was always doing, and I got that it was helping the practice and it was helping me. But once COVID hit and people seemed so much more in need of that communication and guidance and something kind of cohering them to a larger type of situation, I really started to get how it was even more important than I even thought it was. And I was probably doing email marketing 2 to 3 times a month before, and now I send something at least once a week, and that just started since COVID.
Well, I'll tell you, and we just had a Lifetime Wellness Practice event, and Bill Esteb spoke at it.
Mhm.
And at it, I'm a huge fan of Bill Esteb. I think he's very smart and a great advocate for the chiropractic profession. And he actually really said how vital your email list and having being consistent emails with. In fact, he even said the statement that your email list may be of more value than your license. Um,
Oh,
yeah, that's how important it is. And there are people that say, "Oh, email marketing is dead." And you hit the nail on the head. Is it's not so much marketing as connection with your tribe.
yep.
Can
Yeah.
you speak more to that?
And it's so much what you just said. Like, even just saying the word email, like so much in our society, there's kind of like almost a negative connotation around it. Like, oh, it's just junk, it's just marketing. But really, this is growing a connection with somebody. This is a value add to somebody being your client. Like, they're getting
Mhm,
more of you, they're getting more information, more energy.
mhm,
And it creates a great conversation and a great culture in the practice.
mhm,
Um, so that was something that when I have worked with other chiropractors or small business people on this, sometimes a lot of it is overcoming negative ideas about email, where you're thinking you're bothering somebody, you're thinking that you're annoying or bombarding them, and it's like, no, no, no. This is something just like your care that you need to believe in just as strongly as you believe in your own care, because this is helping facilitate the results that people get, is having that connection with you in the practice that way.
Yeah, and it's true, and people have to overcome that in so many areas. Like it's overcoming I'm doing marketing or sales versus that I'm building connection, I'm building relationships. And people are information overloaded and community deprived. So when they meet someone who's sincere and authentic, and they experience getting, they want to have more connection in their life, and they want to have more community life. And when you're coming from the right purpose and place, it 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 can be such a standout to everything else that they'll experience in their world. So and I know you do that very well. What are some other areas of how you create community in your office?
I'd say, and this is probably true for you too, Danny, like the adjusting room, really just that like experience of just like working with your clients. And I don't know, like I always kind of feel like kind of almost like how a bartender would feel, where you just say something to one, you say something to the other, someone says something, and there's just this kind of like magic where it sparks together. Much better
Mhm,
than being a bartender, obviously. Um, but yeah, I really love that dynamic. I love being in a group and being in a small group, and
mhm,
just the energy that that creates, and seeing people's walls come down, kind of like you just said. I mean,
mhm,
starting out, nobody thinks that, for example, an email is going to help them feel that connection and belonging that they've been missing in their life. Like, they don't even have a context for that. It's like
mhm.
our job to like show them that, and then their walls come down, and then they get even better results from the work we're doing with them.
Right. And that's all really true. I mean, we do emails and we also do a paper newsletter. And sometimes I think, man, why am I doing this paper newsletter? Do people read it? And the other day I mentioned our paper newsletter to someone in the adjusting room. And I said, "Oh yeah, that we've had whatever, there was a recipe or something." And all four people on the table looked up and said, "I love your newsletter." And
Oh, that's
I
so
was like,
great.
oh wow, so I guess I better keep sending it,
That's lovely.
but because I've always told people you're visiting them, and same thing with email, you're visiting them outside the four walls of your office, and helps them feel connected to you. And so I feel that's vital, in a service-based industry, which chiropractic is.
Yeah, yeah.
So now, why? Okay, following up on that, you could have chosen other healthcare professions such as I don't know, massage or acupuncture. What were you in school before you went to chiropractic?
Oh my gosh, something completely different. Although now, with more of a big picture, I can see how it's all connected. It was
Mhm.
actually a PhD program for sociology.
Ah,
So the goal being to, go through your
mhm,
dissertation would usually be a book that you would publish of your research, and then get a job as a professor at a university. It was an average of 7 years to get through that particular program.
Hmm.
2 years was looked upon as kind of a good quitting time because if you stayed longer than 2 years, you could kind of justify continuing. But if you knew you wanted to quit, 2 years was the time to go. So that's when I was able to get out.
Hmm.
But I mean, sociology, it's about, how people think and feel and make meaning. And, that obviously comes into play in chiropractic through the
Right.
marketing as well as the actual hands-on work as well. I
Right.
didn't consider any other healing profession, although once I was in chiropractic school, finding out just how long it takes and just how
Right.
many hoops there were to jump through, I definitely found myself wondering if there wasn't a easier way to, get to my goal, which was being able to help people have that same type of experience that I had through chiropractic. COVID really showed me just how great it is to be a chiropractor, though. I mean, I knew before that, but it really just showed me all over again to see the leadership, at least some of the leadership in our profession, be as strong as they were about how essential our work is, and to see professions like massage therapy and acupuncture completely fall by the wayside. No leadership whatsoever.
Right.
Um, just had me very, very proud to
Right.
be in this profession.
Right. Well, and you should be. And that's we need to have even more leadership in the chiropractic profession. Now, a big word, a big phrase now, as I talk to a lot of new grads and students, and also to my own kids, is this story of a work-life balance. Interesting. I was at a Tony Robbins program a few weeks back, oh, a few months back, and the person was talking about team members, and she used actually the term work life integration.
Mhm.
Was the word that she was using from the stage. I thought that was interesting. Um, what is it like juggling work and life as a business owner?
I like that work-life integration. Um, you know, as I'm sure that we have talked about before, balance, work-life balance, totally energy neutral and limiting concept in a lot of ways. Although the integration really takes it somewhere interesting, because I would say that probably my first 6 to 7 years in practice, and I've only been in practice for a little over 10 years.
Right.
The balance, as it were, there was no balance. It was really very strongly putting my time and energy into New Day, my practice.
Right.
And I was able to do that. I don't have kids. I wasn't married. I'm married now, so now it's a little bit different. But that's where I chose to put my energy, and that's what gave me the most energy. So why wouldn't I? Now it's a little bit different being married, moving, buying a house, all these things. And even though I did tilt things so much more heavily early on toward the
Hmm.
practice,
Hmm.
I've always had a bigger picture idea that, like, you can't really just rob Peter to pay Paul. Like, you
Right.
can't take away from one part of your life and give it to another and expect that to, like, feel good for you or anybody.
Right.
So for me, I'm definitely integrating a little bit different now, putting a bit more emphasis in the personal life arena. But along with that, as I already said, I'm going to be moving my practice into where I live. So there's going
Right.
to be even tighter integration than ever before. And that's really important to me. I mean, I think that that's part of that big picture that we have as chiropractors. Like, we know that it's not sustainable to be robbing one area of your life while enriching another. I mean, you don't have to have your practice and your home in the same space to be integrating it. But
Hmm.
that's how I'm going about
Right.
it.
Right. Well, and I think it's important juggling out because you're outside of, I have a 9 to 5 job.
Yep.
There's things that you have to do outside of seeing practice members when you own a business of any kind, right? It's not just being a chiropractor, but any business has that to a degree. So being able to integrate that so that you're not working and just working, but have a way that you enjoy the fruit of that is important for you to be able to continue to give. What recommendations would you have for last things you'd like to share about for chiropractors?
Oh, let's see. Recommendations for last things I'd like to share. So I
Yeah,
already talked about growing the email list. Uh, Social media is really big now. You do a great job with it, Danny. I don't do a ton with it. I just do a little. I think that the most important thing is for people to find out what, you know, in any profession and chiropractic, like find out what's giving you energy and do that, because that's going to come through and then that's going to determine how people are responding to you. So
right.
I write emails. I love writing. Not everybody loves writing, or even likes it. So it's just different for different people. But there's just so many avenues out there to connect with people and show them you care and show them that there's something bigger and better out there for them.
The way you said that is really important. See, all of those things, it's about that word you use, which is connection. And chiropractic happens to be just a little bit about connection. So, the adjustments about connection, emails are about connection, social media posts, it's not to market or to sell, though that's an outcome you want to have, but it's to have connection with the people that want your service. And same thing with community events, such as the ones that you do in your office. So really grateful to be able to have this conversation with you and see you thrive. If people want to get to know Dr. Katie Raymore, how do they reach out to get to know you?
I have a couple of ways to do that. Of course, there's social media. I have an Instagram for New Day that's at New Day NSA. I also have been, as I mentioned before, teaching a little bit about email marketing and writing. And so I have a couple of websites related to that. I have one for like a pre-recorded video product I have to help people get started on email marketing. Then I also have a Patreon, which is a really cool site if you're not familiar with it, but I use it intermittently. Like it's kind of just a way that I gather with people who want help from me in any kind of way, and then I use that site as a way to provide it for them. So you can check out that link too.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for changing lives in your community and changing lives in chiropractic overall. And again, if you're following the Mile High podcast, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss any Mile High tick. And we look forward to seeing you in September at Mile High 11. It's unbelievable. Mile High 11. Yes, these go to 11. Rise up to milehigh.com. We look forward to seeing all of you there.